everyone. Hi, I'm Nancy Goins. Welcome to the, we're in March, right? March edition of 2022 Forest Park Chamber of Commerce. Welcome for all of you who new members, guests, and friends, and old and seasoned veterans. Is that correct? Is that what we are? We welcome you all to this wonderful day of, it should have been spring, but I think it's our second winter. Is that right? And then we'll have 3 more springs before we keep going. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up what I get on my phone so I can read it. Today we are very, very excited to talk about a fabulous project that's going to happen in Forest Park. And it's been a long time coming for both Forest Park and the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. They have been through lots of times and changes and really trying to expand what their services are. And I'll let Paula talk about that in a little bit. So just quickly, wanted to give you a couple updates on what we're doing as the chamber. We're trying to have more in-person meetings, and hopefully, as everything happens, we will be able to continue having all of our in-person meetings. In April, stay tuned for what we are going to do, because we had to kind of flip-flop a little bit on what our plans were, but that should be coming out. We should have a meeting here on April the 12th, and pay attention to your emails, and I'll have that out shortly. And then in May, we are going to have a joint chamber meeting. I'm not sure if it's going to be totally an RCP meeting. We usually have, and where it's going to be, but we have HCDC coming to talk about some programs and their new identity and how they are moving forward with Hamilton County and what is all going to be happening with that, and some small business assistance programs. So pay attention to that. And then May 4th, we are doing a joint chamber outing to FC Cincinnati. So working on the pre-gaming details for that, and then we will be announcing all of that too. So we will have tickets for all of our fun chamber members to go to FC, and hopefully we'll see a win, because I really need to see a win in that gorgeous stadium. It's very, very fun. So now I'm going to introduce Paula Brehm-Heeger. She is the Eva Jane, is it Eve Jane or Eva? Eva Jane Romaine Coombe, Director of the Public Library of Cincinnati. So, and she has been there for, how many years have you been at the library?
A couple. I've been there a little bit. Yeah.
Couple. She started when she was 2.
Yeah.
Just like me.
There you go.
Started our careers really, really early, and we're just hitting our stride right now. So Paula worked as a number of leadership positions with CHPL, serving as the Chief Strategy and Technology Officer and the Chief Library Experience Officer. She currently serves as a member of the Ohio Library Council Board of Directors, and she's got a wonderful long bio that I won't read to you now, but she is doing wonderful things there, and with our $1 million or $1 mil levy approved in May of 2018, and so she's going to give us an update on what we're doing with all the libraries. So, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and it's true, I've met several people today who I know through family or co-workers, so I appreciate the chance to talk with you and talk about what's going on at Forest Park. I was born in Cincinnati, and I actually did find out today, Paul and I are both from Delhi. His name is Paul Brehm. Of course, I'm Paula Brehm, and we grew up, our families lived like literally maybe a mile apart. So we're going to investigate further how we are or are not related, but as far as we know, we're not related. And I did move away from Cincinnati. I lived in Kansas City and Indianapolis, northern Indiana for a bit, but I came back in early 2000, and I've been working at our library since then. My first job was as a student shelfer at the Green Township Branch Library, which is over Louisville on the west side. And I am not going to say how old I am, but I did start there the year that it opened, just to give you a little bit of a clue. Exactly. So I always think of it as new branch, but it's not so new anymore. I do appreciate the chance to talk with you. Paul and of course Don have been so instrumental. I always want to start out and give a shout out to both of them in the City of Forest Park. They've been working with us to really make this a joint project in terms of moving forward and making it a great fit for your community. I will go through a PowerPoint today, and Paul will be moving the slides forward. So Paul, you can go ahead and move forward. So this is just a little bit of what we're going to cover today. My job title, Eva Jane Romaine, Coombe Director. It's an endowed position. So that's why I always say it, because somebody passed away and endowed the job. So we get $1 million from that. We get every year we get $30,000 or $40,000. I always feel like I should say it as if it's syndication. So that's who I am, but that's why the job title is there. And there I am. Go on, Paul. Okay, so we do have a facilities master plan. Some of you may be aware of that. You may have looked at our webpage and seen that facility master plan. Right before the pandemic in 2019, we really in earnest began to build that plan because our library system has about 1 million square feet of public space across the city and county. So we are a city-county system. We have 41 public locations and a distribution center that is down in Queensgate. So we have a lot of space, and our funding, which is about half of our funding comes from the state and about half of it comes from the local levies. When I first returned, we were 96% funded from the state. And if you remember the 2000s, that was not a great time during the Great Recession. We had some serious funding retractions from the state, and then we began to follow the lead of most other public libraries in Ohio and look at levy dollars locally to allow us to continue to operate and support what we had. But what we did during most of the 2000s in the Great Recession and then immediately after is kind of try and survive. I think like most of us, whether you be in nonprofit or business or in government, those were tough years. So when we did pass the levy with the generous support of Hamilton County taxpayers in 2018, that was intended to directly improve the condition of our facilities. So we also went into that plan. We have never had a comprehensive plan for all of our facilities and looked at them across the county. We asked our library board to identify some driving principles. And these are principles that are applied not only to the plan, but to the facilities and to our work around the facilities, which has started in 2019, 2020, and will continue through 2028 at least as we go through that plan. There were about 40 choices, and our board selected these: customer focus, diversity and inclusion, industry-leading excellence, maximizing access, operational sustainability, and transparency. So I do like to go out and talk about what's going on to anybody and everyone who will listen, because we don't want communities to feel like they're unaware of what's happening. Not everything in our facility master plan is everything everyone would wish for. And I understand that. All of you are in the chamber, you have a business, you are in government, you understand that not everything that people want can happen. But what I don't want is for people to say, well, I didn't know that was going on, why weren't you talking about it? So we're out talking about it, and here in Forest Park, we're just so excited to have the opportunity. And in an era when there's so many challenges and so much news that feels like it's not always great, it's wonderful to be able to come to your community and talk about something that is so exciting and so positive. I do want to point out a couple of things just to put some context around this. I mentioned a few of these statistics in terms of our levy. That's a 10-year levy, so it's a 10-year building program. And just for a little background, our libraries, the average time since a library facility had been built or renovated is 43 years. So many of our facilities are more than 80, 90, or 100 years old. We have several that are functional libraries that are Carnegie libraries. The oldest one is Walnut Hills, which I'll touch on in a minute. It was built in 1906. It had never been improved or renovated in any substantial manner. And there are very few things in your life, if you think about it, you go, well, it's 100 years old, but it works pretty well. I mean, that's a long time. So we had to improve our facilities. Furthermore, because during the recession, we had done deferred maintenance. We hadn't had the dollars to do maintenance on our buildings, so we had stopped doing anything other than the very basic necessity level maintenance. So our facilities were in a bit of condition where they needed help. So in 2018, we went out. The levy is 1 mil, 10 years, about 19 mil a year. It's about 190 million. Our facilities plan, which is actually a 3-volume set, if you look at the 3rd volume, it's an approximate budget volume. It's the shortest one. It's probably a little out of date with the way the economy is going, but it did identify at a minimum about $350 million worth of need that we have. And just to kind of give you a context of what we're doing. Go back, one other thing I do want to point out. Because of the escalation in prices, and I know I don't have to tell any of you this, but that example we have in one of the budget documents for our main library, which is also under construction, there had been an identification of something that was approximate $16.8 million in 2018. In escalated dollars, that's right now, that would be almost 18.5 million. So just to give you an idea of what we're facing, and if you look at those documents, and again, it is a document intended to help us prioritize things. So Forest Park at the top being a next-gen library, which I'll talk about in a minute, it is a priority project for us because we have lots of projects and lots of needs across the county. You are in the central planning zone, so there are so many libraries that if you look at our facility master plan, we do have, they're zoned up. What we found when we did our engagement, and we talked to several thousand people in various forums during the facility master plan process, we found that people use libraries in groups. So some people use libraries near their home in groups. I was talking to someone who lives in Green Hills, and so maybe use Green Hills and Forest Park, Green Hills and Mount Healthy, North Central and Forest Park. Maybe you use a number of libraries near your home. Other people drive very far across the county and they use libraries near their work, but not as much near their home. So maybe they work in Harrison and they go to Harrison, they use that library, they use Green Township or North Central because it's right off the highway. So since we don't have all of the money we need right now, we are trying to do improvements across the county and look in zones. Forest Park is in the North Central zone, which does include the North Central Branch Library, Green Hills. I can look at the whole list. It's everybody up here. There are, I think, 5 or 6 branches in your zone. So Forest Park is sort of the one that we identified as the premier opportunity to do improvement for the North Zone right now. Some of you may or may not be aware, in 2019 we had a fantastic listening session at the Forest Park Library. And I said this to every Forest Park group I've talked to, and I mean it. I said it to some other groups too, but I mean it when I tell you in Forest Park. This community is fantastic. It is a community ready for growth, ready for opportunity, very forward-looking. That session was packed. We had so many people, different ages, lots of different kinds of folks there. My favorite moment was I had a man who identified himself as being over 80 stand up and say, you know what we need is more computers. This library doesn't have enough technology. We gotta have technology for the kids right now. I mean, it was just a very, it was a wonderful experience, and there was so much willingness to look at new opportunities and changes. Some communities are a little bit more reticent. They don't want to change anything. They like what they have. But Forest Park, in my experience, having talked to many groups now, I've seen that repeated again and again. It's a community ready to do bold things, and that, I have to say, does influence when we look at where we might go, what community might help us really do something bold and exciting. Go on. Okay, so we talked to everyone, and again, if you look at our facility master plan document on the web, you would see this. And in the second volume, each branch is discussed in depth. So what we heard from the listening session, as well as the condition of your current Forest Park branch. Okay, go ahead. And this is some of the things we heard when we talked to the Forest Park community. Really this idea of flexible space, because I know the community is it's a fairly large community. It has a lot of different dynamic needs. We heard a lot about trying to do things that really engage young people and help develop the future workforce. So we're talking about future ready. So people in high school or middle school right now, how is the library part of the informal educational network that helps them think about what are the jobs of tomorrow? What can I try out at the library that maybe I don't have instruction at school? A lot of focus on technology. We hear that again and again. Social space, it is a community that obviously likes to get together, talk, have community sessions. Some delineation, and then of course this is one of my favorite things, the designation of quiet and noisy spaces. So you have your branch right now is fairly functional. I don't like to throw it under the bus because it's not the oldest branch we have. It's about my age, so I can appreciate it, still wanting to be relevant, but it's not brand new anymore. But it doesn't have great delineation for noise. And libraries they're not necessarily the libraries of my childhood, and we don't necessarily want everyone to be quiet all the time. But we do know that there are different kinds of uses in a library. So if you've been to our new Deer Park library at all, you would notice that what we did is we have a quiet room. So when school lets out and all the kids are there, or if it's story time and there's a lot going on, instead of asking all the really energetic individuals to be quiet, we tell all the quiet people to go together in one room. And then the rest of the library can be a little bit noisier. And it doesn't have that need where you're sitting next to someone who their library use is very different than yours, and you feel compelled to tell them to be quiet, or maybe they feel you are being too loud and they want you to be quiet. We want to remove that. And so a larger, exciting branch that has some delineation and flexibility to allow for quiet people over here, noisy people over here, allows that branch to serve a greater purpose. Okay, so we have a couple of projects to highlight. If any of you have ever been to the Price Hill branch or the Deer Park branch, and if you haven't been to Deer Park, I would really recommend you go to that one because it is really the first one we did that wasn't a renovation or expansion. Price Hill is an older Carnegie. It was in such bad shape, this is true. I became the interim director like the first weekend in July. The previous director retired on a Friday night, and on Sunday morning, my facilities folks called me at home, and they said, Paula, we have a problem at Price Hill. The ceiling had collapsed, and it has had water invasion for many years that we couldn't see because it had a lowered ceiling that wasn't the actual roof, and we had to close it for many months, I think actually 2 years, because it wasn't really suitable for people to be in there. So that is an extreme example of some of the things we were facing, but we started with that one. It was also one that was not handicap accessible. We have a couple of libraries, Price Hill, Warren Hills, and Madisonville, that are more than 90 years old, and if you couldn't do steps, you couldn't get into them because they didn't have an elevator, they didn't have a ramp. So we put those as priority issues as well. Price Hill was the first one we were done, and then we opened Deer Park just in December, and that is over in the Dillonvale Shopping Mall. Has anyone ever been to even the old Deer Park? It was like 4,000 square feet. It was a storefront. The TJ Maxx moved out down the way at Dillonvale. And when we were in a community meeting, it was the Deer Park folks who said, well, have you thought about moving into the TJ Maxx? And this is something that libraries are increasingly getting contacted by developers. As a matter of fact, if some of you are aware that Tri-County Mall, the developer there, in some of their original plans had used what they're calling sort of tired retail and had plans for maybe something like a community center, a rec center, or a library. So this is something that's happening more and more. We did redo the TJ Maxx, and it was great fun to be over there when people came in who remembered it as the TJ Maxx. We were walking through. People love it, but I did have one lady go, oh yeah, that's where the dressing rooms were. So, it is kind of fun to revitalize community assets like that. It was a $4.5 million investment in improving that space. It is a leased space. And some of the features, I just want to point out, the features there are things that you would see likely in the Forest Park Next Gen library as well. Study rooms, there's a large meeting room there. That meeting room actually is accessible directly from the parking lot. What we've heard quite a bit from other libraries is when they do their building plans, if you don't open until 10, there are people, and you close at like 8 or 9, there are people who would like to use your meeting room outside of those open hours. Particularly business folks who might want to have a business lunch in the morning, but they need to be finished by 9:30. So they'll rent your room we have a standard rate for an hour. It's not very much. It's $50. So you rent the room and then you can get a pass that expires. You badge in, you use the room. We have video cameras there. No shenanigans. You leave. You've had your business meeting and the library doesn't open for a little bit. So we are looking at trying to give access to the resources even during hours when the full library may not be open. And that is the case at Deer Park, and we may be trying to experiment with that pretty soon. Okay, and then these are all the projects we have going on. I just wanted to put that slide up there. Madisonville, which is about a $3.3 million project, and that isn't a new development. It's about 8,900 square feet. Downtown, that's it was scheduled to be a $24 million investment. I think it's going to end up being closer to 27 due to escalation. That is our large main library, the outdoor space in their first floor, significant improvements there. Walnut Hills, which is under construction right now, it's a $12 million investment. That is a Carnegie, the first library in our library system. We're renovating it and expanding. It will be about 22,000 square feet when we're finished up there. Green Township, which I mentioned, where I started, it needs improvements. It is one of our refreshes we're doing. Then along the bottom are some, you'll see yourself there, Sims and West End are existing branches that need significant renovation. We're doing the best we can. Both are less than $1 million. We have some maintenance needs. Avondale, Coreyville, and Pleasant Ridge, which are all very old buildings that were refreshed, and I think Avondale has a new elevator from maybe 8 or 9 years ago. They have significant maintenance, so they are part of our maintenance package that we're doing. And then Forest Park, you are our first next-gen library, which is a new library built from the ground up. So Deer Park is a great example, but it was an existing building. Forest Park will be the first one, ground up, new. It's scheduled to be just over $12 million investment for the Forest Park branch as well. So right at the top there with Walnut Hills and those other heavy investments we're making. So we had some serious site selection criteria. In Forest Park, we talked quite a bit with Paula and with Don about various site opportunities. And there are several opportunities, but sometimes when we think about a library and the operational need we have, you can build a library on 2 floors, but it's more operational dollars to staff and maintain 2 floors of a building. So when we look at some sites, we want to have visibility, we want to be on the street, we want to be right where people are, we want to be in the heart of the community, an anchor in the community, an anchor for a business zone, and we want to be on 1 floor because that allows us to put a lot of space for all those things I was talking about and not necessarily have exponentially growth our staffing dollars. So, I see that we have a police officer here who is shaking your head because I'm sure you understand how these things work. Like a building that has nooks and crannies is a challenge. So some of our older buildings, they were great in 1910, but nooks and crannies are cool for the architecture. They're difficult for us to keep visibility. So the Forest Park is an opportunity to do all of these cool things and keep in mind and work with our architecture team to really build something that we can also maintain visibility across this very large building. So this is I think, does everybody in the building, or everybody in the room know now where we're talking about going over on Northland Boulevard? Hopefully, yes. Is there anybody who's not, you're more familiar with the Forest Park community?
It's actually 660.
Yeah, it's, those 2 lots there, it's kind of, it is, and then we're sort of, yeah, exactly. Don, that's the technical term, right? Yeah, we're kind of moving, it's kind of right there. If you go to the next one, it may be a little more clear. Not necessarily. Well, it's that land, it's those lots, and
It's right next to the post office.
right, exactly, it's the spot, you
I
hold
just say
it
you have
to the left.
600 on there. But
Yeah, I think they had highlighted both of them, and I think that the actual spot is that to the left, the one between the post office and the drive. It's right there, right on Northland. And we are so excited. Yeah, thank you. Go back one more, just to quickly. We're so excited because this is such a great place to be. The post office is there. There's shared government services with that location. Across the street, we have businesses, food. There's also residential not far. We stood there on the lot and looked. There's lots of residential areas. It's really a fantastic site for us. We're so excited. Okay, and it does give us the opportunity for several things that are possible because of that site, including a drive-through. Right now, we don't have a drive-through at any of our libraries on the northern part of town. We have one out in Harrison, we have one at Greentown, we have one at Groesbeck, which is not far, but I always consider that more like the west. And I think this one would serve our northern zone better. So that's exciting. Also, all of the parking we hope to have there. Part of the reason that Deer Park was a great investment for us is because people love the parking at Deer Park. And we have a lot of people who may be elderly, they don't like to drive in anything that resembles a tight parking spot. So they love to go to that parking lot because you can go anywhere, you don't have to park by anybody. It's really something that they've expressed to us how easy the parking is there and how important that is for people who want to use the library across the spectrum. And we've heard the same thing from people who have kids and they're coming to story time and they have a stroller and a bunch of little people. Lots of parking that they don't have to worry about finding a parking spot. We've heard that again and again, so we're really excited about that. I also want to point out, thanks to Don and Paul, we do believe that the current building, the Forest Park branch, which again, it's an architectural style that maybe isn't as popular now, but it is very representative of its era, and it is a highly functional building. Will be able to be used by the Forest Park folks, the city, to do some other government purpose. So that is a big win for us whenever we can do something where if we're vacating an existing library, to have it repurposed is fantastic. It's both wonderful environmentally to be able to use an existing building, and also because even if communities don't love the way their library looks, they grew up using it often, and people have an emotional connection, and when the building can be preserved, that is a huge win. So thank you again to our partners in Forest Park for thinking of creative ways to do that. Okay, this is just, if you have thoughts that come to you later and you're thinking about them and when you want to communicate them, our website has this. You can certainly send in comments, questions. We monitor that all the time because we do have many projects going on, so we do our best to keep people informed, again, to be as transparent as we can. So that kind of ends what I have to say, but I'm happy to talk further, entertain any questions, or if you have just general thoughts or suggestions, feel free to throw them out too. Yes, sir.
So you selected an architect?
Yes, SHP, who was in the room. Yeah, they are here, and they will, and I believe that the schools here, SHP, did that as well. But we don't have a construction manager yet, so we're in the process, we're in the next phase of looking. We still are building out our team, but because we're in the design, and we are motivated to do it quickly. I will say that. We knew when we started the process that the levy dollars have more buying power when you use them quickly. So we front-loaded our levy to try and get the most out of the money, while before, even then, we knew inflation and changes make dollars different in year 10 than year 1. So we move as quickly as we can. Yes?
Speaking of construction management, I'm aware of the fact that SHP partnered with Megan Construction, which is a Forest Park firm owned by African Americans.
Yeah.
That I recommend highly.
Yes, and thank you. And we are working with Megan over on the Walnut Hills and the Madisonville projects as well. So absolutely, we're familiar with them, and that's good to hear. Thank you.
And their chamber members.
And their chamber members, yeah, plug. Thank you. Yes.
Is there any additional programming that you suggest that you've seen has been successful in other libraries? Because we have an idea of what we would like to see, but also what have you seen?
When you say programming, just put a little more words around that, like an example of what you're thinking.
You had mentioned that we could use the library for other governmental usage. So I'm thinking educational classes,
Oh,
I'm thinking fire prevention programs,
Yes.
life safety with the police department. So
Yes.
what, have you seen anything?
Well, there are always the technology elements. In a larger building, you have that ability to do some things. We have a maker space downtown. We can't replicate that, but there are pieces of equipment that support small businesses in particular, such as a vinyl sign printer and a laser engraver. So things like that might come, and then they might come also with higher level software that would allow people who are interested in learning more and building their job skills to also be part of sort of, I wouldn't call it a maker space or a lab, but that opportunity which might be set aside in the library as well. We have seen some libraries do double down on certain things like workforce development or entrepreneurial support, so they would have classes around those kinds of networking opportunities and just helping people really engage with things like small business loans. We know those can be quite challenging. I also mentioned Future Ready, and the State Department of Higher Education is very concerned about young folks or people looking for post-secondary education and their lack of understanding or awareness about things that can support them. So something as basic as the financial aid form. They said, libraries need to be ground zero for helping families and young people, particularly people who their parents didn't go to college, understand how to engage with resources that can help them go forward with the workforce, build skills, and engage either in a certificate program at Cincinnati State, 4-year at University Cincinnati, or at Ohio University, something like that. So we're very focused on this idea of future ready. And when you say classes, trying to have parents and families or just kids come in. We know large high schools are overwhelmed right now. They probably didn't have enough folks to help every kid really understand how to do that. So we are focused on that element of workforce development right now in particular, what we're calling future ready. So I think a community like Forest Park, from my understanding, is kind of custom made for that. You're here building the industry and the workforce, of tomorrow, and you're ready to do that. So we do anticipate some things like that. And I've seen those work in other places as well. There are many opportunities, and we will have, if you have some other and you want to share those ideas, we certainly welcome that, but those are the kinds of things right now we're focused on, particularly since the end of the pandemic. We know when you open, we'll probably still be suffering from people who dropped out of the workforce, dropped out of school, and really need help re-engaging so they're ready for their future.
And you mentioned the building will be practical. What about aesthetically pleasing?
Yes.
Like,
I know, no, yes. Yeah, and of course. We have, Deer Park is not the ideal example because we did the best we could to sort of a tired retail space. But if you go inside, it gives you an idea of sort of this sort of style version of a library. It could be, ours may or may not be the same, but it does give you a different feel. Again, Forest Park, I think the chairs in your library are mostly the chairs original to the building, right? So they are, and if you pull them out, if you use them, you kind of have to really work at it, right? They're like serious chairs. And they look like the chairs when I was a kid, because they are. So it's going to be a different kind of style, both inside and outside, but it's hard sometimes to think of that because you have a highly functional, serious building inside and outside. And I don't think it will be quite that style. I'm trying to think, Walnut Hills, when that opens, again, the Carnegie part is one thing, and then we did our best to kind of match it, so it's not necessarily a great example. But we really are looking to do something different and exciting in Forest Park, so it's a great opportunity for us to do that.
Would the outside space be conducive to learning or say presentations?
Gosh, I hope so. I mean, there are lots of opportunities for us to do that, especially on the site that we have. If you've ever been to North Central, which isn't a prime example, but it does have some functional outdoor area. During the pandemic, I was just there. They have a nice parking area, and around the back, they have sort of an area where they sometimes will host things like a kid's story time or a craft program, and it's a grassy area. And I think that's just a small example of they retrofitted it to be able to do it, but we do hope to be able to do some exciting things around the outside of this library. I'm trying to think if we have anything that would be a a great example. At Walnut Hills, we're talking about trying to activate some of the outdoor space where sometimes the building has a little natural nook or cranny, and we will activate that. In the main library, we have huge plazas outside, and we are trying, so that's a great pilot example for us. Our north building, we've just taken down the wall. If you haven't been there, even if you're downtown, just drive down Vine Street. One side of the building is heavily under construction, the other side is much more open, and it might give you an idea of the kind of thing we're looking at generally in outdoor spaces. So they might have the ability to bring chairs out during the day, take them in at night, that kind of thing.
In our little Delhi, they use the outside space, pretty much. They do have outside story time, and they've had it since pandemic. It's right next to the park, but they do a pretty good. I see them when I drive by all the time.
Yeah, that's
But,
right.
Yeah, I just have a question a little bit about the makerspace. In addition to businesses, what we see as being able to use, one of the things I think the makerspace is probably underutilized by businesses, and they probably can. And maybe we could do something about that, because we could give an education program on that. But if you could talk about that a little bit, about what things the makerspace actually can do, and see if we can talk about that as a business.
Sure, and I will go ahead and offer an invitation. If you ever want to have a tour of the main library makerspace, you should reach out. Paul and Don know how to get in touch with me, and we'd be happy to do so, because we do engage a lot with small businesses. Someone mentioned College Hill. They have a pretty active small business quarter they're trying to build, and we have at least one or two folks who use our vinyl printer all the time. So it's a very nice tool to make a very professional looking sign. I have a friend who he bought a franchise beauty salon, and he was like, "Paul, I need to make big signs for this." So he came down and used it, and you can print, you pay for the cost of the sign, and we have heard from many people that is a huge thing that otherwise they could not access or use. It does require a reservation. On occasion people will say, "Well, what about the printing businesses? Aren't you?" If you're using our makerspace as your only tool, you're going to have a lot of reservation time. But if you're using it as a small business person and you have a campaign you're working on, we have button makers, we have flyers, we have the laser printer, we have many other design tools you can use for your own marketing, where you don't pay for your time, you only pay for whatever it is that you print out. You just make your reservation in advance. Likewise, we have laser engraver, so we have some people who do, the woman who lives across the street from me runs a hospice, and they give out prizes to their staff and to some of the folks there. They use the laser engraver. They buy the thing they want to engrave, so it's low cost, and then they come on down and work with our staff to determine how best to engrave these things, and they get all of their prizes right from the makerspace. As a matter of fact, we won an award maybe 4 years ago from the Hamilton County recycling folks, and the coolest thing about that was they used the main library's makerspace to print the award that they gave us. So we went to the thing, we're like, "These are great awards," and they said, "Well, we use the makerspace to make them all." So that was fantastic. So I would encourage you to reach out, and we can set up a tour. We also have small giveaways. There's a whole, if you're a creative business person and you are looking at a marketing campaign or raising awareness, there's a slew of things you can use down there. It's really exciting, I think. It's a great question. And Delhi, incidentally, not to sort of throw down the competition, but Delhi is on it's the next gen library. So Forest Park will go, and the one that we've identified is most likely the other community that would get a big next gen library out of this part of the plan might be Delhi. If you know the Delhi branch, it is from the similar era of the Forest Park branch, but then it had an expansion. And it's a very solid building, but not necessarily, it doesn't have a meeting room and some other things that are really important to today's users.
And then one other thing, I'd like to just congratulate you for what you did during the pandemic. I think that helped, you pivoted and changed a lot of the things that people needed. And it's not the library that I went to and did story time for 30 minutes and that's it. I think that you've done a fabulous job of that, and in addition to growing all of these next generation libraries and what is happening with the library, so.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure to tell my staff that because, you know, the library was closed very briefly in spring of 2020, but beyond that, we were open the whole time. And then when we were giving out the COVID tests, the Ohio Department of Health looked to the libraries across the state, and we gave them out at our drive-throughs. We gave out more than 100,000 last year, and this year we've given out already, even though things have calmed down. We continue to get those shipments, and we've given out several thousand already. But during the height of that, you know, people couldn't get tests, and they were coming to the library, and we were giving those out. So we really appreciate the support of the community, and we do feel it's our obligation to do all that we can, regardless. You know, desperate times call for different ways of doing stuff. So I appreciate that.
But I'll even tell you, I have little kids. A lot of people don't realize, you know, I have these little ones that got sent home. The Cincinnati Public Library was the only place we could find story time. And there were kids that weren't in school, and their schools didn't do anything, but the Cincinnati Public Library had story time every night. And all of your librarians were amazing.
Thank you.
Charter librarians.
I appreciate that, and that will mean a lot to them. I really appreciate that very much.
One more question, this just occurred to me. There's a, kind of an abstract sculpture out in front of the Forest Park ranch. Does that stay in the building or go?
You're not the only person to ask that, and actually, you know, like a lot of the architecture from that era, that has people have very strong feelings about it one way or the other, and we have several staff who are very worried about it. When we looked at it, I believe it will stay with the building because I think it has an interrelationship to the building. If you look at it and you stand in front of it, which you can see that there is some, it's not exactly built into the building, but I think it is contingent on the structure in a way that, if we moved it, I don't know if you could bring all of it or parts of it. So most likely, if Forest Park keeps that, one of the things about that is it would be great to continue to have that opportunity for people to have that, you know, but I don't know that we can take it. And we face that with some of the most loved art we have across our buildings. Murals are also a challenge because we have some libraries that they are not handicap accessible or they don't have an elevator up to code, but they have some kind of cool mural, and to make the elevator happen, you have to disturb some of those things. So it's, as I said, people love their library, and the change can be a little bit of a disruption of things that they do want something different, but sometimes it is a little bit of a challenge to help people understand things do have to change a little bit sometimes. So I hear you, what you're saying about that. Yeah, I have one staff member who loves that structure so much. Some people really are like, yeah, that is something I've seen many times.
I think it goes with the building, I'm glad it's staying.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
When are you anticipating the construction to start?
We're hoping construction will start at the end of 2022 or in early 2023. First quarter 2023 is probably more realistic, you know, with everything going on. But we are hoping then to open it not too long thereafter in the fall of 2023. Again, we're doing our best to go as quickly as we can.
I'd say this, put a period on it, but from the city standpoint, we couldn't be happy working with Paula and her team. We really look forward to the possibility of what can happen there in West Oak and the transformative nature of that building at that location. We have a lot of big plans for that area. We think this is the first step when we're partnering with the library to begin that transformation of that entire corridor. So this is the first step to a bigger project, and we can't wait to see how it's going to look and how it's going to really just make Forest Park a much better place to live and to grow and to do business.
Absolutely.
So thank you for working with us.
Thank you, Don. And not to be overly dramatic, but I believe the first time we walked out there and I pulled in, it was a day like today where it was cloudy and sunny. And then when I pulled in and looked, the sun came down and shined on that area. I thought, oh, well, okay. It really does seem like it is a fantastic fit for us. And again, can anchor businesses there. I play out scenarios where kids come to story time, then they go across the street to grab something to eat, they do a little shopping. There are so many great possibilities, so we're looking forward to it too. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. thank you for being here, and I will get with you about what, we will make a donation to a charity of your choice, maybe either the literacy program or something with the library, in front of the library. So thank you very much. And just a couple real quick things, there's a couple things on the table. Gas prices are going up, electricity is going up. If you want to, we have a chamber benefit, it's for your house or for your businesses. You can send a copy of your bill to the Chamber Energy Program and see if they can get you a better deal. So just let you know that that's an option. There's a lot of other options that we have, tangible benefits with the chamber, with your being a member, and those should be with your membership certificates after you renew. I have a slew of them that are going out tomorrow in the mail, but if you haven't received yours, let me know and renew your memberships. And I think that's it. We'll see you in April, and take care. Thank you very much.